On October 29, 2012, the tri-state area was inundated by a massive storm that would soon become known as Hurricane Sandy. Sandy would soon become the second costliest hurricane in American history, totaling over $68 billion worth of damages and over 250,000 cars flooded. We at Kars4Kids saw a massive influx in donations in November of 2012, just after the storm struck. Although each and every car has its own story, there were two stories that stood out for us from amongst the many cars that were donated to us after the hurricane. One is a story of the tragedy of Hurricane Sandy, and the other is a story of the resilience people showed in the face of a great storm. We'll start with tragedy. The night of October 29th, as the storm struck, Glenda Moore was at home with her two sons, 2-year-old Brandon and 4-year-old Connor, in their Great Kills home in Staten Island. As the storm intensified, Glenda soon realized that she would be unable to remain in her home, even though her home was located outside of the evacuation zone of Staten Island. She packed up her car, a 2003 Ford Explorer, with some basic necessities, and she strapped her two children to the back. After traveling only a few blocks, the car stalled out from the floodwaters. Abandoning her car and holding her two children in her hands, she was tragically turned away from a few houses there as she tried desperately to seek shelter. Shortly thereafter, the storm waters overwhelmed Glenda and her children were washed out of her hands and tragically died. The car was subsequently donated to Kars4Kids, where the proceeds from the vehicle were used to buy over 1,000 children's winter coats for victims of Hurricane Sandy on Staten Island. The second story is a story of resiliency. In the summer of 2011, a property owned by Rubenstein Properties, LLC was heavily flooded by then Hurricane Irene, and the pumps built into the property were damaged. Because of the extensive flooding in the tri-state area, they were unable to purchase or even rent a pump to pump out their property. Brian Archibald, vice president, called a nearby fire department and purchased an old, used fire truck to use to pump the property dry. Fast forward 1 year to Hurricane Sandy, and again the fire truck is being used to pump out the property. Subsequently, the company realized that they needed to build a better, more powerful pump, and were left with nothing to do with the fire truck, which they then donated to Kars4Kids. Talking about this donation, Brian said, "We are so happy that the truck has found a new home where it can hopefully bring joy and happiness to many children." And it does.